What if I told you that your morning coffee, the very first thing you consume each day, could either accelerate hair loss or quietly help slow it down at the root level? Most people think hair loss is just genetics or aging or something that just happens and eventually requires medication or topical treatments. But here's what's really going on inside your body. Hair loss is very often a metabolic and hormonal signal, not a cosmetic problem. And when you understand that, everything changes. Hair follicles are among the most metabolically active tissues in the human body. They require steady blood flow, oxygen, micronutrients, balanced hormones, and low inflammation to stay in their growth phase. The moment your metabolism becomes stressed from insulin spikes, chronic cortisol, nutrient depletion, or liver overload, hair follicles are one of the first systems to downshift. So, if you're experiencing thinning hair, increased shedding, or slower regrowth, your body is telling you something important. Now, here's the surprising part. Your coffee, depending on what you add to it, can either worsen insulin resistance, spike cortisol, and block mineral absorption, or it can do the exact opposite. Stabilize blood sugar, support hormone signaling, reduce inflammation, and improve nutrient delivery to the scalp. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your hair follicles like high-performance factories. They don't shut down because of one bad day. They shut down because the power supply becomes unreliable. Blood sugar swings, stress hormones, and nutrient deficiencies create power outages. Over time, the factory switches from production mode to maintenance mode. Hair growth slows, shedding increases. And this is why so many people are doing everything right, eating healthy, using supplements, buying expensive shampoos, yet still losing hair. They're treating the symptom, not the system. Today, we're going to focus on one simple but powerful leverage point: what you add to your coffee in the morning to send a very different signal to your metabolism and hair follicles. I'll show you how a specific addition, backed by physiology and emerging research, can help reduce inflammation, improve insulin signaling, support nutrient absorption, and create an internal environment where hair growth is once again supported, not suppressed. We'll also cover common mistakes people make with coffee that unknowingly accelerate hair loss, especially when cortisol is already high or iron and zinc levels are low. And by the end of this video, you'll have a clear, actionable protocol you can try immediately. No medications, no gimmicks, just working with your biology instead of against it. Because healthy hair is not about forcing growth. It's about restoring the internal conditions that allow growth to happen naturally. Let's start with a critical point most people still don't understand about hair loss. Hair loss is not just a cosmetic problem. It's a metabolic and hormonal signal. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Your hair follicles don't exist in isolation. They're tiny, metabolically active organs that require nutrient delivery, healthy blood flow, balanced hormones, and a calm inflammatory environment in order to stay in the growth phase, what we call the anagen phase. If any of those systems falter, follicles shift into a resting or shedding phase more often than they should. That's when you notice thinning and loss on the scalp. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your hair follicles like garden plants. Under ideal conditions, good soil, steady water, balanced sun exposure, the plants thrive and grow. But if the soil quality declines, the water gets irregular, or the environment becomes stressful, the plants weaken, stop producing new leaves, and sometimes stop growing entirely. In much the same way, your internal environment, controlled by hormones like insulin and cortisol, and by your nutrient status, determines whether follicles can stay in their growth phase. And one of the biggest drivers of an unfavorable internal environment: chronic stress and metabolic dysregulation. Here's the key physiology. Cortisol, the stress hormone, isn't just about feeling stressed. It literally signals hair follicle stem cells to pause growth. Elevated cortisol keeps follicles in what we call the resting phase longer and slows or stops regeneration. When your body sees consistent stress signals, it reduces the energetic commitment to non-essential systems like hair growth. Your scalp doesn't get priority over immediate survival. Hair follicles are sensitive to inflammation and oxidative stress, both of which are elevated in metabolic imbalances like insulin resistance, poor diet, or chronic stress. That microinflammation weakens the follicle microenvironment, making them more vulnerable to damage and early shedding. Now let's bring this back to coffee. Many of us begin the day with a cup, and most people think coffee is just a stimulant, something to jumpstart energy. In reality, coffee interacts with your hormonal and metabolic system instantly. Depending on how you take it, what you add when you drink it relative to food, how stressed your system already is, it can be either helpful or harmful to the state your hair follicles depend on. That sets the stage for what comes next. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day to help you decode your biology and optimize your health naturally. In the next section, we'll talk about how coffee itself influences hormones like cortisol and insulin, and why that matters deeply for hair loss. Now let's talk about coffee itself, because coffee is not neutral when it comes to hormones. Most people think of coffee as just energy in a cup, but physiologically, coffee is a hormonal signal, especially in the morning, and depending on how you drink it, that signal can either support hair growth or quietly accelerate hair loss. Here's what's really going on inside your body. When you drink coffee, caffeine stimulates your adrenal glands to release cortisol. Cortisol is not bad. It's a natural wake-up hormone, but timing and context matter. If cortisol rises too high, too fast, or too often, your body interprets that as chronic stress. And remember what we established earlier. Hair follicles are extremely sensitive to stress signals. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine cortisol as a fire alarm. One quick alarm in the morning, totally fine. It gets the system moving. But if the alarm is blaring every single day, loud, sudden, and unchecked, eventually the system starts shutting down non-essential functions to conserve resources. Hair growth is one of the first to go. Now, here's where most people get into trouble. Drinking black coffee on an empty stomach, especially first thing in the morning, causes a sharp cortisol spike. Research shows that caffeine amplifies cortisol release most strongly when consumed without food and when baseline stress levels are already elevated, which is extremely common today. At the same time, coffee can temporarily reduce insulin sensitivity and increase blood sugar variability in some individuals, particularly when paired with poor sleep or chronic stress. That blood sugar volatility increases inflammation and oxidative stress, both enemies of healthy hair follicles. But there's another overlooked effect. Coffee, especially when consumed alone, can interfere with the absorption of key minerals like iron, zinc, and magnesium. These minerals are essential for hair follicle function, oxygen delivery to the scalp, and keratin production. So even if your diet is healthy, your morning coffee habit may be quietly blocking the very nutrients your hair needs. This is why so many people supplement iron or zinc and still see no improvement. The signal hasn't changed. Now here's the important clarification. Coffee is not the enemy. In fact, coffee contains powerful polyphenols that can be beneficial for metabolic health when used correctly. The problem is how most people drink it. The mistake isn't coffee itself. It's sending a stress-dominant signal first thing in the morning before the body has any metabolic buffer. And this is exactly where the right addition changes everything. By adding the correct ingredient to your coffee, you can blunt cortisol spikes, stabilize blood sugar, reduce inflammatory signaling, and protect mineral absorption, all while still enjoying the ritual of coffee. This is the metabolic pivot point. And in the next section, we'll talk about the specific addition that flips coffee from a hair loss accelerator into a hair supporting tool, and why the science behind it is so compelling. If this is making sense so far, consider subscribing. I share daily content like this to help you work with your biology instead of fighting it. So let's talk about the one addition that fundamentally changes the signal your coffee sends to your body. It's not collagen, it's not biotin, and it's not a stimulant or a hormone. It's pure, high-quality MCT oil, specifically C8 caprylic acid. Here's what's really going on inside your body. When you drink coffee alone, caffeine acts like a loud signal to your nervous system. Wake up, mobilize energy, increase cortisol. But when you add MCT oil, you change the metabolic context entirely. You give your body a clean, immediately usable fuel source that does not spike insulin and does not stress blood sugar regulation. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine starting your car in the morning and immediately flooring the gas. That's coffee on an empty stomach. Now imagine starting the car with fuel already in the engine. That's coffee with MCT oil. The engine runs smoother, less strain, less stress. That matters for hair growth. MCTs are rapidly converted by the liver into ketones, which are a stable energy source for cells, including hair follicle cells. Ketones reduce oxidative stress, lower inflammatory signaling, and improve mitochondrial efficiency. And hair follicles are extremely dependent on mitochondrial energy to stay in the growth phase. What the research shows is that ketone metabolism can lower cortisol output, stabilize insulin signaling, and reduce systemic inflammation. All three of the biggest internal drivers of hair follicle shutdown. This is critical. When cortisol stays elevated, hair follicles receive a clear message. This is not a safe time to grow. When insulin is unstable, nutrient delivery becomes inconsistent. And when inflammation rises, the microenvironment around the follicle deteriorates. MCT oil helps correct all three. There's another overlooked benefit. By adding fat to coffee, you slow gastric emptying and reduce the mineral blocking effect of caffeine. That means better absorption of iron, zinc, and magnesium later in the day. Minerals essential for oxygen delivery to the scalp, keratin synthesis, and follicle strength. This is why some people notice reduced shedding within weeks, not because hair suddenly grows faster, but because follicles stop being pushed prematurely into the shedding phase. Now let's make this practical. The protocol is simple. Start with 1 teaspoon of C8 MCT oil in your coffee. Slowly work up to 1 tablespoon if tolerated. Drink it after at least a few bites of protein, not on a completely empty stomach. Avoid sugar and artificial creamers. They undo the metabolic benefit. This is not about calories. It's about signaling safety to your metabolism. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day to help you optimize energy, metabolism, and long-term health naturally. In the next section, we'll go one layer deeper and talk about how this coffee upgrade supports the liver and gut, two organs that quietly control hair hormones more than most people realize. Now we need to talk about two organs that almost no one associates with hair loss, yet they may be the most important ones of all: your liver and your gut. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every hormone that affects hair growth, cortisol, estrogen, testosterone, DHT, thyroid hormone, must be processed, activated, or cleared by the liver. And the byproducts of that process must move efficiently through the gut and out of the body. If either system is sluggish, inflamed, or overloaded, hormone signaling becomes distorted. Hair follicles feel that distortion immediately. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your liver as a recycling and detox center. Hormones come in, get modified, and then get sent out in the right form and quantity. If the system is backed up due to insulin resistance, fatty liver, chronic inflammation, or nutrient deficiencies, hormones start circulating longer than they should, or in the wrong balance. That's how you end up with issues like elevated DHT activity, estrogen dominance, or prolonged cortisol exposure, all of which are associated with hair thinning and shedding. Now here's where your coffee habit matters. Coffee itself stimulates the liver, which can be beneficial, but only if the liver has enough metabolic support to do its job. When you drink coffee without fuel, especially under stress, the liver is forced to release glucose rapidly to stabilize blood sugar. That increases stress signaling and worsens hormone imbalance. MCT oil changes that equation. Because MCTs are absorbed directly from the gut to the liver and rapidly converted into ketones, they provide immediate, low-stress energy to liver cells. This supports more efficient hormone clearance, reduced liver fat accumulation, improved insulin signaling, lower inflammatory output. In functional medicine, this is called reducing metabolic burden. And when metabolic burden drops, hormone balance improves downstream, including at the level of the hair follicle. Now let's talk about the gut. Chronic gut inflammation from ultra-processed foods, poor sleep, stress, or blood sugar swings increases intestinal permeability. That allows inflammatory compounds to enter circulation, raising systemic inflammation. Hair follicles are extremely sensitive to this low-grade inflammatory noise. By stabilizing blood sugar and reducing cortisol spikes, MCT-enhanced coffee helps calm the gut environment. Fat also stimulates bile flow, which improves digestion and the elimination of hormone metabolites. That means fewer hormones recirculating when they shouldn't. This is one of the reasons people notice not just less hair shedding, but improvements in energy stability, brain clarity, reduced bloating, better appetite control. Hair improvement is often a downstream signal that the system is healing, but this only works if the context is right. MCT coffee is not a license to skip protein all day, ignore sleep, or live in a constant stress state. It works because it supports physiology, not because it overrides it. In the next section, we'll translate all of this into a clear daily protocol: who this is ideal for, who should be cautious, how to time it, and how to stack it with nutrition and lifestyle habits to maximize hair recovery. And yes, we'll talk about mistakes to avoid. At this point, the science is clear, but execution is where most people slip. So let's translate everything into a simple, repeatable protocol that supports hair growth without stressing your metabolism. Here's what works in the real world. First, timing matters more than most people think. The ideal window for coffee is 60-90 minutes after waking, not immediately out of bed. Why? Because cortisol naturally peaks in the early morning. Drinking coffee right on top of that spike amplifies stress signaling. Waiting allows cortisol to begin its natural decline. Then coffee enhances alertness without overwhelming the system. Before coffee, aim for a few bites of protein. Even 10-15 grams is enough. This stabilizes blood sugar and tells your body it's safe to mobilize energy. Now, the coffee protocol itself: brew your coffee as usual, add 1 teaspoon of C8 MCT oil to start. Slowly increase to 1 tablespoon. If digestion allows, blend or stir thoroughly. Skip sugar, syrups, and artificial creamers. This is not about calories, it's about metabolic signaling. The presence of fat lowers cortisol output, reduces insulin volatility, and supports mitochondrial energy production. That combination creates a biochemical environment where hair follicles can stay in the growth phase longer. Now let's talk about who benefits most from this approach. This is especially effective if you experience diffuse thinning or increased shedding, have signs of insulin resistance or energy crashes, feel wired but tired, lose hair during periods of stress or poor sleep, have low ferritin, zinc, or magnesium levels. But there are also people who should be cautious. If you have active gallbladder issues, severe digestive sensitivity, or are very new to dietary fats, start extremely low, even a half teaspoon, or delay this protocol until digestion improves. Now let's stack this intelligently. Hair growth is a slow biological process. Coffee alone doesn't fix deficiencies. To support this protocol, prioritize protein at breakfast, 20 to 30 grams. Ensure adequate iron, zinc, selenium, and B vitamins. Sleep 7 to 8 hours consistently. Walk daily to improve insulin sensitivity. Avoid chronic calorie restriction. This matters because hair follicles don't respond to force. They respond to consistency and safety signals. If this has been helpful so far, consider subscribing. I share daily science-driven strategies like this to help you optimize health naturally. In the next section, we'll talk about expectations and timelines, how long it takes for hair follicles to respond, early signs things are working, and how to track progress without frustration or obsession. One of the biggest mistakes people make with hair loss is expecting fast feedback from a slow system. Hair follicles don't respond like blood sugar or energy levels. They operate on biological cycles, not daily fluctuations. And understanding this alone can save people months of frustration. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Each hair follicle moves through phases: growth, transition, rest, and shedding. When metabolic stress, inflammation, or hormonal imbalance pushes follicles out of the growth phase, they don't immediately jump back in the moment conditions improve. They need consistent signals of safety over time. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of hair growth like planting seeds in the soil. Improving the soil today doesn't make plants appear tomorrow, but it does determine what grows weeks and months from now. Hair follicles behave the same way. So, what should you expect when you start using this coffee protocol? In the first 1-2 weeks, most people notice systemic changes, not hair changes yet. These include more stable morning energy, fewer midday crashes, reduced jitteriness from coffee, improved digestion. These are signs that cortisol and blood sugar signaling are stabilizing. In the 3 to 6 week range, many people notice reduced daily shedding, less hair in the shower or brush, improved scalp comfort. This is often the first sign that follicles are no longer being pushed prematurely into the shedding phase. Actual visible regrowth, when it occurs, usually appears in the 8 to 12 week window, and even then, it's subtle at first. Fine baby hairs near the hairline or part are common early markers. Now, here's an important reframe. The goal is not to force hair to grow. The goal is to remove the signals telling it not to grow. That's why consistency matters more than intensity. Changing your coffee once, then returning to sleep deprivation, undereating, or chronic stress will not move the needle. Hair follicles are looking for long-term patterns. To track progress properly, focus on shedding trends, not daily fluctuations. Take monthly photos under the same lighting. Pay attention to energy, sleep, and digestion. Avoid switching protocols too quickly. Hair health is often a lagging indicator of metabolic recovery. This is also why topical products alone fail so often. They don't change the internal environment that controls follicle behavior. When you stabilize cortisol, insulin, liver function, and nutrient delivery, hair improvement becomes a downstream effect, not a constant battle. In the next and final section, we'll pull everything together, recap the physiology, reinforce why this matters for longevity and metabolic health, and I'll give you a simple challenge you can start today. Let's take a step back and connect the dots. Hair loss is not random, and it's rarely just about the scalp. It's a biological signal, one that reflects how safe, nourished, and metabolically supported your body feels over time. When insulin is unstable, cortisol is chronically elevated, the liver is overloaded, or nutrients aren't being absorbed efficiently, hair follicles receive a very clear message. This is not the moment to grow. And one of the earliest signals your body receives each day comes from your morning coffee. Drunk the wrong way, coffee amplifies stress, spikes cortisol, disrupts blood sugar, and interferes with mineral absorption, all of which quietly work against hair growth. But when you change the context, you change the message. By adding high-quality C8 MCT oil to your coffee and timing it correctly, you shift coffee from a stress signal to a stability signal. You provide clean fuel to the liver, support ketone production, calm cortisol output, and reduce inflammatory noise. Over time, that creates the internal conditions hair follicles need to remain in their growth phase. This isn't about hacks. It's about working with physiology. You're not forcing hair to grow. You're removing the signals telling it not to. And the beauty of this approach is that hair health becomes just one of many downstream benefits. When metabolism stabilizes, people often notice better energy, improved focus, fewer cravings, calmer digestion, and more consistent mood. Hair improvement becomes part of a broader picture of healthy aging and longevity. So here's your challenge. For the next 30 days, try this one change. Delay coffee 60-90 minutes after waking. Eat a few bites of protein first. Add 1 teaspoon of C8 MCT oil, slowly working up if tolerated. Remove sugar and artificial creamers. Stay consistent. Track how your body responds. Not just your hair, but your energy, sleep, and stress resilience. Because your body is always communicating with you. When you learn how to listen and respond with the right signals, healing becomes far more predictable. If this added value for you, like the video and subscribe to join others who are optimizing their health naturally without medications or extremes. And remember, real transformation doesn't come from doing more. It comes from doing the right things consistently in alignment with your biology.